Hi, today's video is something a little different. We have a box, and in the box is a surprise, and this was sent to me by David from Georgia. And David recently bought a house and it had a NuTone intercom system in it, and he's remodeling the house, and unfortunately the intercom system didn't really fit in with his plans anymore. But he's seen some of my YouTube videos and he's looked at a lot of information on our website, and he contacted me because he thought it would be a shame just to throw it in the dumpster. So he called and wanted to know if I wanted it, and I said sure. And so he said, great, I'm going to pack it up and I'm going to ship it to you, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can fix it or keep it or use it for parts or whatever. I already know what's in the box, sort of. It was very nice of him to do that, so I thought I would open it up, show you what I got. So let's go ahead and open it up. It's kind of big and it's kind of heavy. That's why it's on the floor at the shop instead of up on the workbench right now. But let's go ahead and open it up and see what David sent me. So I've got my safety knife here, and we'll go ahead and open it up. And let's see what kind of job he did packaging it up. He's got a bunch of air packs and some hardware in a bag, and two what looked like pretty nicely wrapped up components. So let's go ahead and take these out. These are kind of heavy. There's one. Put it up on the workbench. And here's the other one. We'll put that up there too. And let's go ahead and we'll get the box out of the way, and let's go ahead and take a look and see what David sent me. Alright, so I've got them up here on the workbench. Here's one and here's the other one. So we'll do them one at a time. It looks like he wrapped it up in some sort of like upholstery padding wrapping material with some really heavy duct tape on it. So we'll go ahead and cut the tape. And on the sides, and here's the first one. Oh, we chose well. So here's the first one that he sent me, and this is a NuTone 2400 Stereo Amplifier. So, and it's got the wall housing, and it looks like all the knobs are been taken off, but I'm pretty sure that's what's in the bag, knobs and hardware. So let's go ahead and set this aside. It's kind of heavy. And we'll get rid of this. This is really heavy too. Believe it or not, this, whatever this is, some kind of padding stuff, this probably weighs 2 or 3 pounds. It's pretty heavy. So let's go ahead and open this one up. If you know anything about this, you already have guessed what's in this one. If you don't, it'll be a surprise. And even since I know what it is, sort of, part of it could be a surprise for me also. I'm sort of hoping about part of it. Let's go ahead and open it up and see. And I was right. It's a score. So this is the 2401, which is the AM/FM stereo receiver, or tuner. Sorry, tuner. So let's go ahead and put this off to the side for a second. And we'll go ahead and put these here. Here. And so what we have is two the two main components of a NuTone 2400 stereo music intercom system. We've got the tuner with intercom controls here, and we've got the AM/FM stereo tuner here. And the two other components that could have been added to this would have been an in-wall fold-down record player, and then either a fold-down record storage cabinet, or for the ultra rare reel-to-reel tape player, which I've only ever seen one of, and it happens to be one that I have. So this was a very nice of David to send these to me. These are ultra rare models, very hard to come by, and he thought it would be a shame to throw them away. So I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and open these up just a little bit. This isn't a repair, it's kind of a review of what they are, but let me show you what makes them unique. Okay, so this is the 2400 stereo amplifier, and 2400 systems are a tube-based model. It's a tube amplifier, not solid state. This particular one, according to the mark inside the cabinet, was made in February of 1965, and this was absolute top-of-the-line model for back in that day. NuTone has only ever made a handful of stereo music intercoms, and this was the very first one that they ever made. And it came out, I think originally it came out in 1960 or 1961, so this is a little bit later on in the production. I'm not sure when it was officially discontinued. There's not a lot of documentation about this model, so, and there isn't anybody left that I can find that was around when these were available new any longer. So the information on them is a little sketchy. You've got a real wooden cabinet with a metal faceplate. The metal faceplate is stapled into the back of the cabinets, and some of it's kind of come loose, but that's really easy to fix. You've got a metal grate or grill work here, and then the bottom of the case is open, because tube amplifiers generate a certain amount of heat when they're turned on, and with the vent hole on the bottom and the vent grill on the top, you get a certain amount of convection to keep the unit cool. The air inside the case gets hot from the tubes, and since hot air rises, it will rise out of the grill work, and by doing that it'll pull cooler air in from the bottom, and that's what maintains the temperature. You've got all of your basic stereo controls. There's an on-off switch and a power indicator light, and then you have loudness, which is volume, not loudness in the sense of more bass. You have balance right and left. You have bass and treble adjustments, and then up here are your 8 intercom control switches, and these are 3 position switches. When it's set to the lower position, that station would be on, center is off, and the upper position is listen, or what we would call listen in, or later became monitor. You could listen into sounds in that room. So let's put that aside. And then here we have the actual amplifier itself. And this is the back box, or what they used to call the A box, and it actually says here amplifier A box, model 2401. It draws 95 watts. That's not the power that it puts out, that's the power consumption of the unit. And this box is actually dated January of 1964. It's got this big terminal block down here. This would be sort of the high voltage wiring hub for the whole system for all 2 or 3 or 4 components. There's a fuse here. There was originally a cover over this, which might be in the, I think it's in the bag of parts. And I can tell you, these early wall housings like this, or rough-ins, the gray ones, these things are really heavy. This probably weighs 4 or 5 pounds. It's built like a battleship. That's why it's battleship gray, I guess. So that's interesting. And then here we have the amplifier itself. It's a very nice design. Here are our 4 controls, and their functions are actually stamped into the metal chassis. The on-off switch here is broken, and I think that might have happened during shipping. Here's the little knob for it, and it was in here. But the nice thing about that, we can just set that back in there, make it look like it's in one piece. The nice thing about this is I've repaired these before, and I found that this switch is the same switch that Fender, the guitar amplifier company, used on their 1960-ish amplifiers. So these aren't too hard to find. And then you've got a little neon pilot light here. On the front, you've got the tube layout, or the basic layout of the amplifier. You've got a relay for the intercom, a power transformer, and then it calls out all of the different tubes that are used in the set. These are your 8 intercom control switches. And these are fairly high quality switches. This was a spare no expense type of system. I have a local customer who lives in Oakland, California, and that house was built in 1961, and it was built by a fella who was a professional baseball player for a local team called the Oakland Oaks, which you would know nowadays as the Oakland A's. He built this custom ranch house, and it has this system in it. It's a full complement system. It doesn't have the reel-to-reel. It's the tuner, amplifier, record player, record storage with 8 pairs of stereo speakers. And that's one of the things that's unique about this is most intercom systems, they're monaural systems, which means 1 speaker in each room. Stereo systems have 2 speakers in each room. So that makes them unique. And this particular house has all 8 stations. And we figured it up once when I rebuilt it for a previous owner. Back in 1960, that system without installation probably cost $3,000. And that was a lot of money in 1960, let alone to spend on something like an intercom system. So if we flip it around on this side, this is the terminal strip, and this is where the wires from all of the remote speakers would be connected. It's divided up into 2 blocks. This side is speakers 1 through 4, and this side is 5 through 8. And the 2400 system is an 8-wire system. So you have orange pair, red pair, blue pair, black pair. It's pretty conventional. Orange is audio in, which would be for the intercom. Red is the A channel, which is the right channel. Blue is the B channel, which is the left channel. These are the stereo channels. And then black is for communication to the front door station. So it's pretty straightforward to do. On this type of system, the intercom, when you're talking back and forth from room to room, you're talking only through the right channel or the A channel station, not both of them. The intercom communication is not stereo. So these are the back of the room control switches. This is all hand wired. This is not a mass production unit, so it took a lot of time to make these, I have a feeling, which is why they were so expensive. And then if we flip it over, you can get an idea. Let's go ahead and prop this up a little bit. Here are the tubes. So you've got a complement of power and preamp tubes, and then you have your 4 power output tubes, which are these 4. This particular model uses the power tubes are 6 AQ5s, which is a medium power output tube for an amplifier. You've got 2 transformers here, and then the one big giant power transformer that powers the whole set. You've got a couple CAN capacitors here that are chassis mounted, and then inside the silver box, this is the intercom relay. This is the only part that really changes this around from being a stereo amplifier to an intercom amplifier. One of the things I see in this, which is kind of interesting, is someone's had a play with the tubes. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit and I'll show you what I mean. So here are some tubes. They have metal shields over them, and that's to help prevent them from radiating interference into the set. None of these tubes appear to be original. If these were all original tubes, they would all be labeled as NuTone on them. They would have the little orange NuTone triangle, and it would say NuTone with the model number of the tube. And it looks like these have all been here for a long time. If we take out one of the power tubes, these look like they're all RCA. They're the right models. I don't necessarily see a date code on it, although it could be 1962, but that seems kind of early compared to the date of the set, so I'm not sure what's up with that. One of the problems with tubes like this is if you try to clean them, to clean the dirt and stuff off of them, you'll rub off the markings and you can't tell. But the thing I saw that's most interesting, and I actually have seen this before, is this tube, this one, you can't see that. It's this one right here. So this is the preamp tube, and this is a 12AX7, and a 12AX7 is a really popular preamp tube. Let's see if we can get it out. And the thing that I noticed was, which maybe you can see if I hold it in the right place, look what it says. It says made in West Germany, and right here is the ever sought after emblem of the Telefunken tube company in West Germany. And Telefunken is one of those highly sought after preamp tubes. In fact, tube aficionados live and breathe for Telefunken tubes, and I can guarantee you that this tube did not come in this set new. So if we brush it off, we might be able to find a date, but I don't see one. Anyway, people that are really into tubes really want Telefunken tubes, especially 12AX7s. And it's for there's lots of different variations that they've made, and certain ones of them are more highly sought after than others, and you have to get the ones with the black plates with the little holes, or it has the little wavy grooves in it, and there's all this mystique around these kinds of tubes. But what this tells me more than anything else, and I've actually seen this type of tube in these sets before, is that whoever owned this was really into this, because to go down and buy a tube like that, you would have had to talk to somebody who knew about the tubes, and the audiophiles all get together and they discuss the different qualities of the tubes, and then somebody bought it and brought it home and put it in the set to see if it made it sound better, and I'm sure they believed it probably did, and so on and so on. And that's what people that have tube equipment like to do. In fact, it's not uncommon, like the output tube, they'll buy them in sets. These are in sets of 4. There's 2 for each channel, and they'll order them special order, and they'll be highly matched. They'll be tested and measured, and for their output and their ratings, and they'll come up with matched pairs, and there's all different brands and kinds, and they produce different kinds of tonal qualities and all of these kinds of things. So whoever owned this originally not only spent the money to have it put in, but they spent the money to play with it to make it the way they really wanted, and that's pretty cool. Alright, so here we are back at the front of the set, and it has this cardboard insulator, and if we carefully pry up these little keepers, we can take this off, and I can tell you, having worked on these, this is all very original. In fact, here we have, it's a quality control. It says accepted by quality control, and somebody initialed the final box. So I'm not sure what this was for, whether this came from NuTone this way, or maybe this had been worked on at some time, although I don't think it had. So this is probably from the factory, and somebody checked it out before they shipped it. Oops, one more. We'll take this off. And now we're kind of into the business end of the whole thing. And for those of you who have never seen inside a tube set before, it can be a little intimidating. So we're looking at the business side, or the bottom of the chassis side of the amplifier, and this is very typical of what you would find in a hand assembled early or mid 60s tube amplifier. It's all point-to-point wiring, which means the sockets for the tubes all have tabs, and components are wrapped around connections and soldered in place, and it's this giant maze of parts and wires and cables and things going from one place to another. And here we have a capacitor, and we have these connectors that plug into the switchboard assembly, So that can be removed, and you're only really seeing about a half of what's here. If this lower panel was, the screws were removed, this folds down to gain access not only to the back of the controls, but to more components down in here. And these are quite challenging to work on. One of the things that's interesting that I see right off the bat is this little round can right here, which you can't see too well. This one right here. This is an audio isolation relay, and it's interesting because it's got this waxy stuff that looks like it's dripping out of it, and there was a little piece went flying out. And it's kind of interesting because the last one of these I worked on, it was the same way. Inside here is a little transformer. It's for audio decoupling, and it's in this metal case. And I think when it was assembled, wax was poured in there to help keep it from bouncing around or vibrating or something like that. And I think from the heat of the tubes over all the years, it slowly melts and runs out the gaps in the case, and like that, and it's kind of messy. I also see here, right here, there's some electrical tape that's been wrapped around some of the wires, and I don't think it was made that way, so maybe somebody has worked on this a little bit. The other thing that's kind of interesting, which you don't see much anymore, or at all, see if I can show you, is down in here. There's this right here, this little blue square with the screw in the middle. So this is a Selenium Rectifier. And a selenium, well, it's not a Selenium Rectifier, it's a Selenium diode. And this was the earliest form of diodes, and selenium is an element, and it's made into these square metal square pads, and it's sandwiched between the metal plates, and then voltage is passed through it, and it acts like a modern day diode. The only purpose that this serves is it's part of the intercom relay circuit for the intercom functions, and selenium is actually a fairly toxic and hazardous material in today's world. If these fail when the set is powered up, you get this giant mushroom cloud of selenium smoke, which smells really bad, and it's really bad for you. So these kind of sets, this is almost always replaced with a modern diode. And what's really interesting is the diode that replaces this little square, it's about an inch square and it's about 3/8 of an inch thick. This can be replaced with a diode that's about the size of a grain of rice. Things have changed a lot in 50-some years. This is all quite exciting to work on. Now let's go ahead and look at the tuner, because the tuner actually has something really special about it. So here we have the Model 2402 tuner that goes with the 2400 or the 2401 amplifier. This is, I looked on the date code on the inside the case. This is January of 1965, and the chassis for the tuner is also marked as January 1965. So these two were made around the same time, and I'm sure they were sold together. The thing that makes this tuner special, the thing that I'm excited about, is there were actually two versions of the tuner for this model. When the original system came out in, say, 1960, the selections would have been off AM, FM, phono, and tape. And then on about 1963 or 1964 maybe, it's hard to say because nobody's around to ask anymore, they came out with an updated version of this tuner, which this one happens to be since it's from 1965. And this one has off, AM, FM, and FM stereo, and then phono and tape. And it's the FM stereo that makes this unique and special. One of the things that people don't know or don't remember, if you've been around for a while, is that back in the early days when FM radio started to become more and more popular, FM radio was not stereo. FM radio was monaural, just like AM radio was. It wasn't until about 1959 or 1958 8 or 7-ish, something like that. It was the late 50s when commercial radio stations began to broadcast in FM stereo. And in the Bay Area here, there was a local station. It was KSAN, K-S-A-N, and it was owned by a fellow named James Gabbert. And the story that I was told is they used to broadcast in FM stereo on Friday and Saturday evenings from like 6 till 9 p.m. And the rest of the time during the week, they would broadcast in FM mono because very few people had FM stereo tuners. Everybody had just standard FM tuners, and there wasn't a lot of reason to broadcast in stereo because it was a new thing. It would be like having the iPhone of the day. It was like if you had an FM stereo receiver, you were really hot stuff. This is a revised version, and I'm going to show you how NuTone accomplished that. So let's go ahead and take the case away. And here we have the chassis, and it's very similar to the layout of the amplifier chassis. It's an all steel chassis, and there's some aluminum also. You have the cover plate here that covers up the back of the chassis where all the componentry is. You actually have two selector switches here. You have channel A and channel B, and they both have, because remember it's stereo, and stereo is two channels, right and left, or A and B, and each one of these switches has the same selection choices. You have off, AM, FM, FM stereo, phono, and tape. And when you go to change your selections, you have to change both knobs. So if you want to listen to AM, you have to set channel A on AM and channel B on AM. If you want to listen to FM stereo, you do A and B FM stereo. I'm not sure why they made it this way, because they certainly could have used a double gang switch and it would change both inputs at the same time with one knob. It may have been a style choice to balance out how it looked, or it might have been a reasonable physical choice because there wasn't enough room in the chassis to accommodate a larger switch. I don't really know why. Again, we have a broken on-off switch, which is unfortunate but not too hard to replace. We have the cardboard insulator with the layout here of what your basic components, or I'm not going to say components, but tubes are on it. Power transformer, some adjustments, something that's called a whistle filter, which this is one of the things I like about this model. Here it says, whistle filter. This adjustment is factory set. Do not attempt to readjust. They were warning installers, don't mess with it. Leave it alone. We already set it up so it works the best that it possibly can, and leave it alone. So it draws 42 watts when it's turned on, and it also has a real glass dial face. This is not plastic. This is actually really real glass, and the printing on it is both on the front and the back. On the back of it, it's printed in all the white markings, and the upper scale is just a numeric scale, I think, to help you fine tune in your stations. And so the right hand scale here is your FM, and your left hand scale here is your AM. And so the white markings on the back of the glass and the little gold markings here with the dots, they're printed, and where it says FM and FM stereo and AM here in gold, these are printed on the front of the glass, and they did that so when you look at it, it sort of gives it a 3D effect, and the white markings sort of show around the edge of the gold markings, and it gives it some depth and it's easier to see, which is kind of a nice touch. You've got the two mechanical dial pointers that move back and forth, and this is a true AM FM tuner, so there's an AM tuning gang here and an FM tuning gang here on this side. And then if we flip it around and look at the back, or the top, you have a power transformer here, the AM tuning gang, the FM tuning gang, a variety of adjustment coils, an assortment of tubes. There's a fuse, but the money shot in all of this is this right here. This is the FM demodulator, and the FM demodulator is the part that makes this an FM stereo tuner. In the previous versions, this isn't on those. On the standard models that is just strictly FM, this space is left blank, and they were able to incorporate this into the existing design so they didn't have to redesign and build a whole new unit. And this is what makes FM stereo possible. And actually, if we dust it off a little bit, it says FM stereo multiplex unit, part number 40211, part of model number 2402, tuner, NuTone Incorporated, Red Bank and Madison Road, Cincinnati, Ohio. And this is the heart of the FM stereo unit. What's interesting here is that this tube right here is original, and I think that's probably, no, this one is original, and this one is original, and I'm not sure about the rest. Some of these I can tell have been replaced. This one is original also. And what we find a lot of times in tuners like this is these are all considered to be small radio tubes, and generally they last a really long time. This one here is a rectifier tube. This is a EZ80, and this is actually original also, which is kind of unusual because if any tube in this set's going to fail, it's going to be this one. It says made for NuTone by Mullard. Let's see if it has a date code on it. Can't tell. No date code, but it is original, which is kind of nice. The money tube in the whole thing is this one right here. So you can see here on the tube from the FM multiplex unit, it actually has the NuTone markings on it. It was made by General Electric Company for NuTone, and it's got the old school NuTone font with the T with the lightning bolt on it, which is kind of cool. This is a 12-pin tube, and this is the 6D10, and a 6D10 is what's called a compactor tube. And what that means is, if I remember correctly, there are the equivalent of 3 or 4 tubes all encased into one glass envelope. And I read somewhere once a long time ago that tubes like this are actually, some people consider them to be the first integrated circuit. Integrated circuits are usually identified as solid state components, and there'll be the little packages with legs on either side, and inside the package can be dozens or hundreds of little individual transistors and diodes and other things like that, all in one little package. And that's what makes it an integrated circuit, because all of the components are integrated into one package, which is very similar to this. This is a very specialized tube, and it was used, this is the only set NuTone ever used this on. So since this has the stereo multiplex unit in it, this is actually a Model N2402, and denoting a revision, or it's a newer version of a 2402. Things I've always found interesting is in the service manual for this, as a supplement for the AM/FM stereo tuner Model N2402, it describes briefly the differences between the two tuners. It gives you a very fundamental alignment procedure for this particular tuner. And one of the things it says in the beginning of the instructions is a stereo FM signal generator is usually employed for alignment of multiplex circuits. However, we understand that this equipment is not commonly found in most repair shops. The following procedure utilizes standard test equipment and is recommended for those who don't have the necessary stereo testing equipment. So this was a new enough idea that NuTone understood that most NuTone service centers wouldn't have the necessary equipment to do a full alignment on it, so they came up with a simplified type of alignment that could be done with ordinary bench equipment. None of that was uncommon for back in the day, because it was a brand new technology or a brand new idea, and it takes time for those of us in the real world to get up to speed on something like this. So this makes this a special tuner. This is only the third one like this I've ever seen. Most of the ones I've had come through here are just the standard FM tuners. So there you have it, a 2401 NuTone stereo amplifier and an N2402 AM FM stereo tuner. What am I going to do with it? I don't have any idea. I appreciate the fact that David sent it to me. I hope you found this a little bit interesting. You got a chance to see a little bit of NuTone history today. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube. If you like our videos and support our channel, please subscribe to it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.